Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, good. All right, so yesterday I made things a little more complicated than they needed to be by parsing things into a data structure that I probably didn't need to do. Um, and so today I'm going to try to uh, not make things any more complicated than they need to be. And anyway, so I'm set up here. I've got my VS Code window. I've got my IPython console. I've got my browser. Um, and I've got 30 seconds before I start. So let's hope that it goes. Oh well. All right. And apologies if people are like using the live chat. I don't know how to look at that and code at the same time. I think I probably need more screens than I actually have. I have other screens, but not here because I'm sitting in a chair. Okay, so let's see what this says. You arrive at the airport only to realize that you grabbed your North Pole credentials instead of your passport. Well, these documents are extremely similar. North Pole credentials aren't issued by a country and therefore aren't actually valid documentation for travel in most of the world. Seems like you're not the only one having problems, though. A very long line is formed for the automated passport scanners, and the delay could upset your travel itinerary. Due to some questionable network security, you realize you might be able to solve both problems at the same time. The automatic passport scanners are slow because they're having trouble detecting which passports have all required fields. The expected fields are as follows. So let's copy this and put it over here. Passport data is validated in batch files. Each passport is represented as a sequence of key value pairs. Passports are separated by blank lines. Here's an example of a batch file containing 4 passports. The first passport is valid. All 4 fields are present. The second passport is invalid. It's missing height field. Third passport is interesting. The only missing field is CID. So it looks like data from North Pole credentials, not a passport at all. Surely nobody would mind if you made the system temporarily ignore missing CID fields. Treat this passport as valid. Fourth passport is missing 2 fields, CID and BUR. Missing CID is fine, and it is not. You're improving 2 valid passports. Those that have all required fields, treat CID as optional. In your batch file, how many passports are valid? Okay, so once again, I will do raw equals this. Actually, no, that's not. I didn't copy what I wanted to copy. What I wanted to copy was the example batch file. Okay, so here raw is going to be that. Okay, and now let's do from typing import dict because I'm going to need that. And let's say that a passport is going to be a dict from string to string. So they may okay, and let's say make passport and let's again say raw, which is a string, and it's going to return a passport. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed it like one of these chunks, and I'll just say lines equals raw dot split on. And let me just strip split on new lines, and then I'll just equals line dot strip for line in lines if line dot strip. So just worry about blank lines like that. And then what I want to do is I want to say return. So for line in lines, for chunk in and actually rather than doing a comprehension, I'm going to do dict for the following reason. For line in line, for chunk in line dot split on spaces, it looks like I can do, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each chunk and split it on that, which is going to give me two things. And so I'm, and let me just return that. Why is that not working? Because it wants me to put it in a list, probably. Okay, so what doesn't it like? No overloads for that's okay. So all right. I think this is Pylance's fault, and just say passport equals this. So I'm just going to do it the long-winded way. For line in lines, for chunk in line dot split. Key value equals chunk dot split on this, and passport key equals value. Return passport, and then let's say make passports, which is raw string, and that's going to give me a list of passports, and that will just do chunks equals raw dot split on two new lines, let's say, and then I just want to return make passport from chunk for chunk in chunks. And again, this is like me being like super defensive programming by throwing out blank lines. And so let's just try this and say make passports raw, and that looks like it did the right thing. And now what we want to say is valid passport, which is a passport, and that's going to be a bool. And let's say required fields, which is going to be a list of strings, equals default fields. And that's going to return a bool, and just return all field in passport for field in required fields. And then we want the default fields, because I'm worried they're going to make us change that in part 2. So they said everything except country ID. So beer, ear, higgets, hickle, eckle, and pid. And now what we want to do is say passports equals make passports from raw, and assert that sum, we can just use sum to count booleans that are true, is valid passports for passports in passports equals, and then let's see, in their example, 2 valid passports. So let's do that as 2, and let's run it. That seems to work. So now let's count the number of valid passports. So let's get my puzzle input, copy it, save it, and now with open inputs day04.text as f, passports equals make passports f.read, and print sum is valid passports for passport in passports. Okay, so that will tell me how many of them are valid. And let's try it. It says 190 of them are valid. So we'll see if I got it right or if I screwed it up. That's the right answer. Continue to part 2. The line is moving more quickly now, but you overhear airport security talking about how passports with the invalid are getting through. Better add some validation quick. You can continue to ignore the SID field, but each other field has strict rules about what values are valid for automatic validation. Your job is to count the passport. The required fields are both present and valid according to the above rules. Okay, so def is valid to passport bool, and so let's say return all, no. Okay, and so let's say at least 1920 is less than or equal to passport.get BUR, and let's put a default of -1, which we know will fail the test in 2002. Okay, so that's one thing. And then we have issue year. So again, we can do 2020 is less than, and I guess I better put int around this, is less than int of passport.get IR and -1. It can do anything as a sentinel value. Is most 2030. Okay, and height is a number followed by either cm or in. Okay, so now we need some regexes. Import re. Re dot match let's see, 0 to 9 plus, so some digits, and then either inches or centimeters, end of string, and then passport.get height, and there will return an empty string which will not match the regex. And oops, I messed that up. Number must be at least 150 and at most 193. So let me just change that and say valid height passport.get HDT, and I'll write that as a separate function. I didn't read that part. Is valid height. Hair color, I think that means a pound. That means it must be exactly 6 characters, 0 through 9, or A through F. So I think that one we can use re.match of a pound, and then 0 through 9, A through F, exactly 6, and let me put my start of string, end of string sentinels, and then passport.get HCL, HCL, and this. Okay, and then eye color. That one we can just do passport.get ECL. Has to be one of amb, blue, burn, gurry, gurn, huzzle, and auth. Okay, so that's that one. PID is a 9-digit number, so again we can use re.match r start 0 to 9, exactly 9 of them, and then a dollars, and that should be passport.get PID and empty string, and then country ID ignored, missing, or not. So I still have to write the is valid height. Is valid height HGT, which is going to be a string, is going to be a bool. So again, if re.match and let's just do it this way. If if HGT dot ends with CM, or if HGT dot ends with CM, then let's just say HGT equals HGT dot replace CM this, and then try return 150 is less than or equal to int HGT is less than or equal to 193. Otherwise, it's not valid, so we'll just return false. And then otherwise, if HGT dot ends with inches, HGT equals HGT dot replace inches with empty string, and then we will again try, and like catching all exceptions like that is pretty bad form, but you know, we can we'll let it slide. Less than or equal to int HGT less than or equal to 76. This is the sort of thing where there's so many conditions that if it doesn't work, it's going to be really a real pain to debug. And then if it doesn't end with either of these things, then we have to return false as well. So what is this complaining about? I forgot a parentheses. That's what it's complaining about. Okay, so let's run this for passport in passports. Print is valid to passports. False, 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 false. Okay, so those. Okay, let me make a couple more test cases. Invalid equals make passports. No, I didn't copy correctly. Is that right? It's hard switching back and forth between Macs and other ones, as you may know. Valid equals make passports. Let's get these valid guys. And we will put them here. And now assert all is valid to passport for passport in valid, and assert not any is valid to passport for passport in invalid. Okay, so let us run this. Assertion error. Okay, good. For passport invalid, print passport, print is valid to passport. Nice. So none of these work. So now let me do this. Checks equals that. Print checks and return all checks. So we can see which checks fail. Okay, so for the first one, we're getting a false for the second condition. And for all these, we're getting a false for the second condition. So it's the second condition that we screwed up. So the second condition is that I year is between 2020 and 2030. And okay, so this one should not be valid because IR is not between. Did I just read the condition wrong? IR has to be 2010 and 2030, and year has to be 2020 and 2030. Okay, so I really screwed this up. That wow, did I just not read it right? Is less than int passport.get IR minus 1 is less than or equal to 2020. So beer 1920 to 2002, IR is 2010 to 2020, expiration year is 2020 to 2030, height, hair color, eye color, passport ID. Okay, so now that I've done that, let us run it again, and now my assertion's passed, and a bunch of other stuff didn't pass, so that's good. So so now let's try some is valid to passports for passport in passports, since it seems to be working. 121. All right, let's try it. That's the right answer. Okay, good. So, relatively straightforward, except that I didn't read the conditions correctly. But once again, saved by the unit tests. So, obviously, parsing the passports, and as you saw, I'm always really defensive about running strip because I'm super paranoid about extra blank lines and extra spaces and things like that. And then here's the thing. What I wanted to do originally with the dict comprehension or with a dict constructor, that would have worked, except that like the signature for that constructor says that I really need to have a two tuple. And like when I do this assignment here, I'm basically telling Python, take it on faith that this really is a two tuple without doing this unpacking. It just says you have like a string a list, and I can't make sense of that. So that's why I had to do it this way without using. And Pylance is pretty finicky. So first is valid was just checking that we had the required fields. That's pretty good. For is valid to, we just went through these checks, and obviously I forgot one or I missed one and screwed another one up. For the ones where I have to insist that the value is in a range, I do a couple of things. One is I use get with a -1 default value, so that if that key's not there, I get a -1. Then I cast it to int and check the range, because -1 is not in the range. These will all fail. the height thing was complicated enough. I needed to pass it off to its own function with a blank if height wasn't there. Using regexes for the hair color based on the hex codes. Using like a list of valid values for the eye color, and then using another regex for the password ID. And then for the is valid height, they basically said if it ends with centimeters, then throw out the centimeters, and what's left should be an integer between 150 and 193. And if it's not an integer, this int will fail, and that will return false. Otherwise, we'll check this. And then if it ends with inches, do the same thing basically. And this is a good Python trick where you can chain comparisons like this. So if you want to check whether a variable is between two other numbers, you can just write it out like this, which I like a lot. It's very very cute. And then running it. So there we go. Be careful. You saw I wasn't careful and I got it wrong. And write unit test. You saw that the unit test saved my butt. So all hail unit tests, and I will push this code to GitHub. And thanks for watching, and I will try and do this again tomorrow. Good